Our second lesson this morning comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13, and we read verse 1 through verse 9. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there, while the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears listen." This is the word of the Lord. Good morning. It is a wonderful privilege to be here with you in Second Press this morning, and this time not sitting in the pews but sharing the worship service with you from the pulpit. And I'm very grateful to Dr. Lewis Galloway and the leadership of the church for this invitation. It is a great honor to be with you on this Sunday. They tell me one of the last Sundays of summer, so you better soak it up if you know what's coming, they say. Well, it doesn't really matter whether it's winter or summer. You have always been so warm and gracious in your hospitality and in your friendship with our family. And Dr. Lewis Galloway has become such a wonderful friend, as have so many of you in this church. And I'm just so happy that this morning is possible. It is, after all, a good way to end the summer. And thank you, Dr. Galloway, for that generous introduction. I think where we met must have been in Riverside Church, where I preached with Dr. Sloan Coffin. That was the night where Peter, Paul, and Mary sang, right? Peter, Paul, and Mary. Those of you as young as I will remember that, right? But it's wonderful to be back here in the United States and be surrounded by children of God in a different place than New York City. And I have nothing against New York. My brothers and sisters, this morning, I would very much like for us to give our attention to what we read. Can I give you this? Thank you. For what we read in Matthew chapter 13, those first 9 verses dealing with the parable of the sower. And especially if we think on the subject reckless abundance. Reckless abundance. Preachers live in hope, looking towards Sunday. Sometimes during the week we mess up, right? Phone call that we don't return, that email that we don't get to, the visit that we promise that we never make. So we hope, but on Sunday, we'll blow them away from the pulpit and they'll just see how wonderful we know the Bible, we can explain the text, we can apply it to the lives of the congregation, and all will be well. But what if Jesus beats us to the punch? What if it's a portion of Scripture like this morning's, that Jesus not only tells us the story, but he explains everything a few verses later. Verse 18 to verse 21 tell us exactly what the parable is all about. So what do we say then, we preachers who cannot hold a candle to Jesus when it comes to just about everything? Is there anything left for us to say? I believe that there is something left for us to say. The way Jesus works is never to take everything away from us, but to just open it up so that we can see the possibilities and the power that is in this Word of God. So Jesus begins as he explains this parable by saying, this parable is about the word of the kingdom. And God is the sower who sows this word into the world. But what word is that? This word about the reign of God. It's not just about what we read this morning. Obviously, it's about the whole word of God. We heard Psalm 103 read this morning. It's a psalm that just cannot stop celebrating the goodness and the mercy and the love and the justice and the compassion of God, verse after verse after verse. And that's just one psalm. I mean, if you read the Bible, we can go through all of it, and it bubbles over with this thing, the promises that God makes to God's children, every desire for justice, every pledge of forgiveness, every declaration of love and mercy and compassion, all of it meant for all of God's children. It's all there. That's what the word of the kingdom is all about. What happens when that kingdom breaks into the world, when that kingdom begins to touch people's lives and begin to turn the world upside down or right side up probably. But Jesus takes it all and brings it all together. Remember when he speaks in the synagogue in Luke chapter 4, and he says, the Spirit, this is why I have come, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to preach liberation to the oppressed, to release the captives, to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord. And it is for all who want it. That's why the parable repeats, listen, everyone who has an ear, everyone who wants to listen will know it and can have it and can embrace it. And so it's meant for the lame and the blind, for children and women, for prostitutes and tax collectors, for the lives of people are being transformed and the world is being changed. That is the seed of the kingdom that is being sown. So it's good news. It's good news. It's good news for everyone. But what about the sower? Well, remember, the sower is God. But when Jesus tells the story to those crowds, and they were the ordinary folk, the fisher folk, and the peasants, the farmers who tried to make a living off the little piece of land that they had, so that their family could live. And they also, from what the proceeds, they had to give so much taxes to the temple, and so much to the high priest, and so much to Herod Antipas, and so much to Pilate, and so much to the Caesar in Rome. So what they held over was very, very little. So they got to think about how we do this from year to year. Palestine is a dry country. Rainfall is scarce, mostly rocky soil. You have little patches of good soil here and there, but only here and there. So if you are a responsible farmer, you think about those things. The seed that you have this year is the seed that you held over from last year's harvest. When the taxes are all paid, and you now have to keep what's left over for your family to make a living, you then have to think, what do I save for next year? And that's the seed that he keeps for sowing time. So when sowing time comes and he prepares the soil and he makes the furrows carefully, he slings his bag over his shoulder and then he walks those furrows step by step by step, and he makes sure that the seed falls into the right places, because it's precious stuff we're dealing with here. Nothing can be wasted. So when they hear a story about a sower who doesn't sow like this, carefully, because he knows what he's dealing with, but like this, whoops, and like that, they think, what is this? I mean, he doesn't know anything really, does he, the sower? I mean, nobody flings seed. That's why we read that some seed fell on the rocky ground. Because he doesn't do this, he does this. Rocky ground. He does this, amongst the thorns. He does this on the path, and the birds have a field day. But the soil does not respond because there's no seed in it. The seed is totally wasted. And they look at the sower, and when Jesus speaks, they think, he must be crazy. He is absolutely nuts. Or maybe some gentleman farmer from the city, right? Who thinks, I'll run over to the farm over the weekend and I'll just do a little bit of sowing, but he doesn't know what in the world he's doing. Well, they listen to Jesus and they think we don't know what's going on there. But Jesus thinks this is the point. When it comes to the seed of the kingdom, about the reign of God, about God's justice, about the hope that people must have, about the life abundant that they must have, about mercy and grace and all of those things, I cannot be stingy. I cannot sit down with a calculator. I cannot think, how do the rows flow? How much do I have? I don't think I can sow a bit today and a bit tomorrow and save some for next week. No, God sows as if there is no tomorrow, with gay abandon, with total recklessness, undisciplined. Looks as if God does not know what God is doing. From one side, pretty stupid. From another side, absolutely amazing. A God who sows and sows and sows. God flings it everywhere. You know why? Because God thinks, I know that I don't have just good soil over there. But if I just stick to the good soil, some folk may miss that. Some may be there on the rocky ground, hiding behind the rocks. Some may be there amongst the thorns. They are so choked up with pain, so choked up with anger, that the moment they hear the word has no space to grow. There's nothing there. God thinks, I can't miss those who are hiding behind the rock. Sometimes they are so hurt, so full of pain, so full of disappointment that they think the rock is the best place for me. But God thinks, I sow because perhaps, maybe just today, amongst those thorns, there will be fertile ground. Maybe just today, amongst the rocks, the seed will fall on fertile ground. And God looks at the path where the birds come and somebody is running down that path away from God, and God thinks, I can't let her go. I've got to sow that seed. Perhaps today, they will not leave it for the birds. And that is why the sound so incredible. That's why it may sound stupid to a farmer who knows what they are doing, but to us, hiding behind the rocks, sitting amongst the songs, choking to death with whatever is hurting us inside, running away from God, to us, that's life-giving, my brothers and sisters. That's why this abundance is the greatest gift that we can ever have. The more reckless God is with us, the more we love it. The more we should take it. The more we should embrace it. Because God thinks, may not have worked last Sunday, it may not have worked the previous Sunday, may not have worked, but maybe just today it works. Well, what is also true, though, is how this amazing, rich, reckless abundance of God is resisted throughout the Bible. People find it hard to deal with this undisciplined mercy. People want God to be a bit more particular. And the Gospel of Matthew is full of it from the beginning, though. I mean, when Jesus' birth is announced, it's not just the people in Israel who hears it. No, the Magi must come from the east because the whole world must share in this celebration. But immediately Herod resists and he kills all the children. There's resistance to the mercy of God. And in the gospel we find it from the contestations with the ruling elites in Jerusalem to Herod in his temple to Pilate in his palace, everywhere. A few passages on we read of the parable of the workers in the vineyard. And the one comes early in the morning, some other folk come about tea time, some others come at lunchtime, yet more comes at 4 o'clock, and yet more comes just about half an hour before everybody goes home. The owner of the vineyard says, oh, okay guys, stand in line, and he pays everybody the same wage, even those who came just half an hour before going home time. Well, we read in the gospel that then the other workers got very upset because they say, how could you do this? And Jesus says, how could you say that my eye is evil when I want to be good? It's because we resist it. Seen from another point of view, you could always look at that parable of the workers in the vineyard and everybody gets paid no matter how long they work. And you must think, though, Jesus would so have failed Harvard Business School, right? But we resist that. We somehow in the church tend to think that it's okay if God is so merciful to us around here, but God can't be merciful just to everybody, right? We've got to be a little bit more selective here. God is not selective enough for our taste sometimes. I know I was like that. You may not want to admit it, but let me tell you. So I had a list at some point in my life. I made a list and I said, God, let's make a deal. On this list, all those people I don't want to meet in heaven when I get there. And just to make sure there's no confusion at the pearly gates, I gave names and description. Well, of course, God laughed at me, and God said to me, okay, Alan, but what if I have a list, and you're on it? We can't say, yes, me, God, but not her. Yes, me, Lord, but not him. Yes, me, Lord, but not them. It is that kind of mercy, that kind of grace that is reckless in its abundance, and it's just what it says. It is for everybody, because God sows, and that's grace and mercy and love. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, and this is the thing Jesus repeats from the parable in the passage that he explains. He says, and the seed falls on ground, and some yield 30, some yield 60, some yield 100, and it does not matter. God says, I know you. If the seed falls somewhere today, but you're still so angry with me, you really cannot yield more than 30. Jesus says, that's all right. If there's still something in your heart that you're battling with, or things that you haven't dealt with, or somebody else that's still angry at you, and you can't really respond, God says, it's okay. Can you only give 60? That's fine. I'm grateful for those who can respond 100-fold, but if you don't get there today, don't fret it. Don't worry about it. Don't sweat the small stuff, because you know Jesus says, I can multiply bread and fishes, and I can feed thousands. Think what I can do with a little bit of your love. I can do all of that. Think what I can do with just a little bit of your compassion. Think what I can do with just a little bit of your opening up your life to somebody else today. Only 30, that's all right. Only 60, it doesn't matter. If it's 100, it's fine. I will multiply it. I will make it 100. You just have to say, here I am, Lord, as I am, as I am. That's weird, though. But that's so wonderful. That's great. I would rather have a God that is totally reckless than all of those other attributes we think up in those thick books we write about the attributes of God. Just give me reckless and I'll be all right. Just give me reckless and I'll be fine. Just give me reckless and I'll respond. Just give me reckless and I'll be good. Just give me reckless and I'll bring my 30, knowing that God knows that in the end I'm so much better than just a 30 that I healed. And I don't have to care about it during the week that comes, because every day I give my 30, God will make it 100. That's great, right? That's love. That's mercy. That's a recklessness I embrace. And so should you. God bless you.